Hey there, and welcome to a new episode of You Are the One You Seek. I'm sorry. I was just trying out my pizzazz vibes, because people in this space, they got way more charisma than me. So I'm just, I'm trying to sell it, baby. That's a joke. That's a bad joke. But I'm an old white guy, so humor is just kind of, escaping me more and more these days. And when I do find that I'm in the mode of humor, it can either be like delicate and funny like Jim Gaffigan, or just brutal and just a nasty assault of vitriol like Bill Burr. I have both modes, and I'd love to pretend like I'm some enlightened being who has transcended the anger and frustration of being a human, but I find this life so fundamentally absurd that oftentimes, like, channeling my anger about the absurdity is kind of the only way I can cathartically deal with it. And it doesn't mean that it has to be like, unleashed on other people. But I do have a difficult time still processing absurdity and putting it in its proper place. There's still a part of me that feels like it's so unnecessary, that this world is so upside down and backwards. And that comes down to a fundamental lack of understanding of what this whole plane is about. And I do understand it on a head level. I just haven't fully integrated that into like day-to-day life. So I understand that we come to Earth for dynamics, for cycles of push and pull, and all the different energies you can choose from within that. And so all of the chaos and darkness is a choice. It's a valid choice. It facilitates us towards eventually desiring a movement back towards the light. So when I see darkness, when I see children being, bombed and starved, and my heart just breaks over and over, and I see, wildlife being wiped out for oil drilling and all these antiquated forms of energy, when I know we have clean energy tech that is being held hostage from us, it's that kind of stuff that makes it really tough for me just to like relax into life, to be at peace, and to understand that I have chosen my own little part within this, but it doesn't mean I have to attach myself to everyone else's trip and suffering. I can trust that I've had my own lives where I've been a child bombed or killed ruthlessly and, in terrible conditions. I think that's probably something most of us experience in some capacity, just so we can fully understand the depth of what human beings are capable of, and how it feels to be on the side of victim, offender, and mediator. But a big part of this, I think, is so that we grow tired of cycles. We grow tired of doing things in a repetitive loop, and we finally break out and say, okay, we can do this differently. We can actually harness the divinity of our light being, our higher self, our Christ itself, bring that to earth, and make this a motherfucking celebration. I mean, that's just me, but I think we're here to party, dude. Like, if we want, I think we're here to have fun, to be like children in our awe and wonderment. I think you see the transition from your children, if you have kids, you see from like when they're young and just not burdened by all of your, the parents and the world's doubts and limitations. There's this limitless nature to children where they just are in the moment. They are living in the moment. They are absorbing everything. They are content. Well, not always. There's human nature, of course, and genetics, and the push and pull, the cycles. But generally, they're living in this really, like, I think, enlightened state. We see it as immature or not fully developed, and obviously there are pitfalls, but there's something about it that's also, I think, enormously enlightening to us if we pay attention. That ability to live in the moment, to not be so caught up in judgment and, self-conscious thoughts of how am I coming across, how are they perceiving me, just like being present with somebody and not worrying about what are they thinking about me, what do they think about the way I sound or look or talk, all the things that run through my head a million times a second when I meet a new person or I talk to somebody that I really care about. So much concern about how are they perceiving me. And I think I put out a certain energy with that makes people kind of want to push away a little, or, pull away a little bit, I should say. And maybe it's because they can sense that I'm looking for some form of validation from them, that I need some sort of reassurance. And so I've been very aware this last year and a half where I haven't had a job of how I've been when I have worked, how I've communicated with people, how I've communicated with my family, and just realizing a lot of it coming from a place of lack, a place of victimhood, a place of needing people to see and feel my pain. And I realize now how that's really not a healthy way to build relationships, and it's an easy way to get trapped in a narcissistic victim complex. And so, yeah, I lived there most of my life, just feeling victimized, and I have plenty of valid excuses. I think like most people who feel like victims, physiologically, I have a lot of weird, like undiagnosed genetic stuff going on, a weird like heart condition that I have had diagnosed, but a lot of other, like strange muscle skeleton type of weird things that I'm not trying to gross you out with medical details. I wish I had a little bit of, a few more answers on like what's going on there. Cause just the consistent headaches and the constant, like, really sore muscles and just fatigue kind of vibes can really wear you down and make you just feel like you don't belong here. And your body is, screwed up and never going to get better, only going to get worse. And as I age, it only gets worse, but I still have a choice within that. Like I can't choose. Maybe I did choose, as I know I chose, as a soul, the body that I'm in. So instead of like feeling victimized, I can ask, why did I choose this body? Why did I choose to go through these certain things? And if I see it as not just random and accidental and a tragedy, then I can start to like, maybe find some kind of positive meaning from it. Maybe there is a lesson I needed to learn about not basing my contentment on the feelings of my temporary physical vessel. Maybe my contentment needs to come from a higher, more complex understanding of who I am. Not complex like I have to go to school for it, but complex that, I understand that I'm more than just a simple flesh and bones being on this earth only. That I'm a multidimensional, infinite being having one of just, I guess, an infinite amount of incarnational experiences, or however many I want to have. Apparently some beings never even incarnate into the human form or into physical beings. So it's not like this is just how everything works. I think creation, the universe, all of it is more dynamic, creative, and beautiful than we can wrap our heads around with a human construct. But I think we're going to have a lot more of that open up, our awareness and understanding of our multidimensional self, of the non-physical world. I don't have proof, I just have hope, and that's about all I can cling on to right now, because so much else feels, extremely slippery. It's especially slippery right now with relationships, and I know a lot of you can relate to this. There's a lot of family members, for those of us who are in our 40s or maybe 30s, parents that are really stuck in some kind of old school ways of thinking and doing. In my case, my parents are very fundamental Christians, and they still support Donald Trump. And I've had some pretty difficult conversations with them, but I had a really beautiful conversation with Pauline Edward yesterday, and she just gave me some really good reminders of, that I always have a choice how to interact with anybody. Yeah, I can express my disappointment and my frustration and why I am heartbroken that they side with people that hate the people that I love, but at the same time, I can still be more inquisitive with them and less judgmental, and more loving and open. And I did try to, at least with the last time I spoke with my mom, at least. My dad won't really talk to me about any of this kind of stuff. When I spoke to her, I think she took it pretty hard because she felt like I was trying to cut off the relationship. But I was really just trying to say, I can't pretend like there isn't this major divide in how we see reality at this point. But I buffered it with the truth, which is that I believe that they are infinite souls, just like I'm an infinite soul, and they came here to live out a very specific purpose, just like I did, and that nothing they're doing is invalid, just like I believe nothing I'm doing or anyone else is doing is invalid. It's all part of the experiences we chose to have, and if we trust that we are infinite, sovereign beings, then every single step we take is our path. It is the right step. It is us organically moving towards who and what we are. So, you may be like me and go through life just full of doubts, full of like, what the hell am I doing here? Like, is this serving any purpose or benefiting anyone? And I guess the peace is coming to that point of realizing every single step is your life path. It is your plan. It's part of what you came here to do. And yeah, you might be on a trajectory of accelerating or slowing that down, but there's no rush. Like nobody's in a rush. Only the human mind is in a rush. Your soul, your infinite self, there is no time for it to be pressured by. So like if you don't get things right in this life or learn all the lessons you came to learn, man, you got like as many tries as you want. And I know that sounds horrifying if you're a human, like, why would I come back here? I don't think that necessarily means you have to come back here if you didn't learn the lessons here. I think there's probably way more opportunities than we are even aware of. But I don't claim to really know how it works. I haven't had an NDE. I haven't had a direct interface with a non-human intelligence who, spilled the beans. But to me, I have enough, I guess, belief in channeled messages and NDEs to kind of compile a picture of how things are. And I'm sure it's going to be unique to each one of us. But I feel pretty confident going into death that I'm kind of going to be like ready for what's to come. But I also hope that I throw myself for a curveball and it's like kind of nothing like I thought it was going to be. Obviously for the positive. I don't want to like get surprised and wake up in what feels like hell. But if I did that, I wouldn't be there for more than a second, because I know I've heard all the stories of people who have had NDEs and gone to hell or whatever, gone to their version of hell, which is the key word. It's their version. It's their fear, and it's their fear of judgment that generated that place at all. So you can go to low vibration states, places you don't want to be. I have heard about that plenty of times. But I think there's an awareness that's missing from those experiences where the people in them didn't know that they were infinite beings and didn't know that this was something they could easily break out of just by remembering love, by remembering who they really were, by singing about Jesus even. Like there's stuff like that where people had a Christian song in their head they sang, and it like shot them out of hell. And of course, the ex-Christian former atheist in me was like, alarm bells going off, like, hold on, what? Really? You sang a Sunday school song and that got you out of hell? But then I thought about it and I was like, well, yeah, I guess darkness wouldn't really appreciate anything having to do with, Christ on any level, whether it's a misinterpretation or not. The Christ consciousness represents a transcendent love, which is like apparently the power and peace and love of our future self, that energy, that multidimensional energy coming through to us now. Like we're working with the past, the future, everything all at once. So we're actually interacting with a glorified state of ourselves when we access the Christ consciousness, which is just, again, simply the energy of loving others unconditionally, of seeing others as worthy of occupying the same space as you and breathing the same air and having the same rights and access to the same, resources and food and everything else. That's the world that I see in the future. That's the world Bashar and Yeshua and many others have described, is that there is no way forward other than diversity. So for those who think that one race needs to tower over another, you're living in a past energy, man. Like that's old school, dead separation energy. And the earth is going to move more rapidly towards not a split into two parts apparently, but more of like everyone's going to be able to sort of open up the earth and universe that they want for themselves while still sharing a consensus consciousness of how reality looks. But I believe that the much more positive, cooperative version of that is what we're going to see. And that's within the next, I think few decades. I think there's going to be some really significant events coming up in the next few years. Of course, people have been saying that for centuries. The one that's really interesting to me right now is Bashar he's been channeled through Daryl for 40 years. And a couple of years ago, he said that open contact, which is to say that contact with non-human intelligences that is sustained and obvious to the public, will occur within the next 5 years. Now he's saying definitively by 2027. And that's a pretty big deal because he hasn't given a date this whole time. And, most people understandably are quite tenuous around dates given for any kind of big event. He didn't give a specific time in 2027, just said by 2027. So my thinking is that means it could occur before that. We already have open contact. Open contact occurred when human beings were created. This earth has been populated by many different civilizations, and we don't even have the first clue on the complete history of this earth. Apparently, according to Bashar, we will be given that by the Pleiadians or maybe his people. I'm not exactly sure who will be providing the holographic record of our entire history. But my God, can you imagine the profound, just paradigm shift that would happen if we were given unfettered access to our complete history? I'm sure, there will be those who stay stuck in their version of reality, claiming that those, holographic messages are like AI or they're fake or, we're being manipulated by them. But I imagine that will be largely the religious crowd that stands to lose the most by finding out that, their gods were actually non-human intelligences that humans misinterpreted as gods, because they didn't have any reference for those kinds of beings at that point in human history, allegedly, according to my limited understanding and Bashar's channelings and whatever else. So what's the point of all this, David? Why did you come back to rant and ramble? Well, because I just want to remind you that this all comes down to your specific journey. We can look to, and Pauline reminded me of this, and I really appreciated it because it's something Bashar says a lot too. We can all look to our preferred gurus and masters and guides and channeled beings and NDE experiencers, but all of that is to point us back to ourself. It's all to remind us of that our higher mind, our higher self, our oversoul is the one running the show and the one that we need to be in communication with. You're talking to Bashar and getting information from Bashar is just a shortcut or maybe even a longer way it might be a longer way to your higher mind. Bashar says as much, that he is not to be seen as anything, special or different, because all he is really a conduit to access our own higher mind. That anytime we access higher knowledge, it's just our higher mind communicating it to us. So we can define it however we want, but I find that really empowering, that it really is about getting in touch with who you are and trusting that is of equal worth, value, and importance as these channeled beings. And all the people you see on YouTube who feel like maybe they're more spiritual or special, they're not. We're all equally as profoundly spiritual, divine beings. We're just at various levels of contact with that higher part of ourselves. And as time progresses, more and more of us will awaken to that contact. So yeah, I guess really a big part of this episode is just to emphasize to all of you that you don't have to make declarative decisions about relationships. You don't have to throw away a long-standing relationship with your parents over Donald Trump or whatever issue it might be, or Christianity. But it's absolutely acceptable and beneficial for you to set boundaries, to have open and honest dialogue, to at least put it out on the table that you are willing to discuss things openly. And if they are not, and if they're the ones who, tense up and restrict and become judgmental, that's not for you to internalize or take personally. That's a reflection of their own viewpoint and where they're at. And you don't have to absorb that. You don't have to feel responsible for it. It rings very true to me from so many elements from the Yeshua channelings chapter, letting go of your birth family. One of the pitfalls Yeshua talks about is how we often want to be the parents to our parents. We want to save our parents, right? We kind of want to flip roles and rescue them from their poor outlook on reality, or, their misguided outlook on reality, or whatever it is that we think they have, and that it's really not our job to do that. Anytime you share something that potentially will alter someone's outlook or perspective on life, you have to really be gentle with your approach. You have to see if there's even any acceptance to the idea of discussing it. If they're completely closed off and just mentioning, channelings or Yeshua or Bashar makes them very uncomfortable and defensive and twitchy and weird, just drop it. I've learned that with my parents. Like, I've tried so hard to be open and honest, and it's just met with so much discomfort and folded arms and scowls and bad faith rebuttals that I don't really see the point in trying to keep hashing that out. And Bashar even says this a lot. Yeshua says this a lot. If the other party is not interested in what you're talking about, then it's not meant to be discussed. You're not meant to be there to fix or save them. Maybe one thing will stick that they're resistant to that you said to them, and that's all you really need to do. You don't need, you're going to lose people and further alienate them from the thing you're trying to reach them for if you are aggressive and push it. It's just like, a persistent evangelical type of Christian who can't stop preaching to their friends, can't stop proselytizing. Like, I was in various stages of that and quickly learned this is a good way to isolate yourself from potential friendships, because they can see the disingenuousness of, like, you're just trying to get everyone saved, but you don't really care about, an actual relationship with them. You just want to make your God happy and move along. So, yeah, people are much more intuitive and good at sensing what we're thinking than we really believe. And I think that's another power that comes online soon, is psychic abilities to communicate and understand each other, not in some crazy intrusive way where you can steal someone's thoughts, but like where you can communicate complete ideas versus just words that are easily misunderstood and lack context and color and depth. You can basically communicate the whole fullness of an experience that someone can then almost experience themselves. The colors, the sounds, the taste, the smell, all that stuff. But the more we sit around waiting for the Savior to come, waiting for the ascension moment, waiting for the flash of light and all the things that I've been waiting for 2027 for first contact, or not first contact, open contact, definitely not first. Waiting for all these things to change is really just a recipe for personal disappointment. There's no reason to wait. I realize I'm still doing that, and it's me saying I don't trust myself enough. I don't trust that my higher self is as competent or as advanced as these other beings that are guiding me. And to be fair, they're communicating very clearly and with very profound messages that are easy for me to understand. I haven't gotten that obviously from my higher mind in a way that is understandable to me. But for all I know, like, all of my profound thoughts come from that. And so I just kind of don't give it credit because I just assume, well, that's just me. That's just David. And maybe a lot of my insights are being communicated directly from my higher self. I don't really know. I don't have it's not like it's obvious. And I guess that's kind of the point, is it's meant to be sort of in your own voice and just you communicating naturally. Bashar talks about that with people who come to him asking questions about channeling themselves, doing channelings themselves. And he always says, just start by getting a bunch of people in a room. You get yourself into a relaxed and focused state and let them start asking questions and just start answering them. And, you might not believe you're channeling anything, but you are channeling your higher self, and you may be surprised at how much that actually helps people. And I was kind of blown away by that. And I also really appreciated that, because there's a lot of, gatekeeping for so many things. And I'm sure with channeling too, it's like, oh, well, no, you're not doing it right. You got to take the class like Daryl did and blah, blah, blah. No, Bashar is saying, go for it. If you think you have an ability there, go for it. That's something I see myself doing in the future, is being in group settings and helping younger adults. This is something Pauline and I talked about, where I'm helping younger adults just sort of accept the absurdities of the earth plane, but also to first and foremost find love and forgiveness for themselves, and to realize this is a chosen experience that they get to play within and create whatever they want. That nothing is set in stone, and that no matter what messages they might have been given, they are infinitely loved and infinitely love themselves. So, like, yeah, Pauline and I went over my charts, my astrological charts and my numbers and stuff, and it was really interesting to hear how this is my 9 year, and it's supposed to be a year of like not doing too much, which is perfect because I still don't have a job, and I am really in kind of a low energy mode of just observation and supporting my family, being a house husband and doing the cooking, shopping, and cleaning. Not, I'm not like Miss Doubtfire. I'm not just like full-time, breaking out the toothbrush and scrubbing the floors, but like I'm keeping things in order, I still need time to meditate, to relax, to focus on self-discovery, but I'm realizing how incredibly important and helpful it's been to have this time, and how incredibly grateful I am that financially we've been able to make it work, because most people are in such a different situation that is so difficult, and my heart breaks for how many people are just on the brink of ruin financially, or literally homeless, and just over so many calloused, heartless decisions made by people who have more money than they could ever know what to do with. But I'm not gonna turn this into a political rant or go down that rabbit trail. It's just I really do pray and hope that this help and assistance we get comes soon. That there is the open contact we receive is a major turning point in human history, where we are willing to adopt some of their principles of how to run society, and look at the examples of how they've done it and go, yeah, we can do that too, and to finally embrace the clean energy technology that has been here for a very long time. There are numerous examples of that you can find just looking it up online. There's a whole Y-Files episode that covers all these different clean energy technologies that were confiscated by our government and had some super secretive patent put on all of them so no one could access the tech, which is crazy nefarious. But there's too much money to be made and too much power to wield with energy when it's something that's finite, and you charge a bunch of money for it. So until we get past oil dependence and secretive governments that safeguard all these secrets, we're going to be stuck doing this and struggling to survive. But I just have to remember that even those who are struggling, going through the worst of it, every experience is something that you chose to have to give you a deeper perspective, a wider understanding and appreciation for all the things that are possible, so that when you create your own realities and experiences as a more enlightened, higher vibrational and higher frequency being, you will be able to create from experience and knowledge, and not just like, conceptually, like, I think this is how this is. Let me try this. And then it, you create something that doesn't work because you didn't actually live it out. You didn't really understand both sides of the issue, or all the sides of the issue. So we're here to understand all the sides of many issues. Now, why we go through so many repetitive issues that are so terrible, like, being bombed and raped and, killed in all these various horrible ways. Why do we choose that? I get it on a broad picture, but obviously the empath in me is still like, what? Like, are you serious? What kind of like BDSM fetish do we have as souls? Do we just get off on masochism? Like, what is happening here? Are we freaks? And anyway, these are my thought processes. I really truly don't get, like, even doing this thing or even allowing this thing to be as it is. But then, you read Yeshua talk about stagnant energy and how things were in a deadlock in the universe. And that's even hard for me to understand how that happened, or how we're somehow like the cog in the wheel that's going to free up the works. And when you look around, you're just like, really? We got Kid Rock hanging out at the White House, the most powerful nation on earth. And that's just that's the tip of the iceberg, obviously. But like, how are we going to like shift the whole universe into this positive vibrational state, or whatever I keep hearing about? I'm just so curious and so happy to be here for that. Like, yeah, there are days that go by where I full disclosure, I would much rather be back home and out of this body. It's not like the way I used to be depressed and be like, I want to die, I hate life, everything's miserable. It's more like, this is hard, it hurts, and I know things are just like friggin' butter back home, like everything is just understood, peaceful, there's no threat of anything. That sounds obviously perfect, but I didn't come here for perfect. I didn't come here to recreate exactly what I have back home. I came here to get messy and get my hands dirty and try out one more time being a human being. But please let this be the last one. That is my deep prayer and hope. I will come back and do like human 2.0, like human in 4D, which is what we're supposed to be moving into. So let me get into that real fast, and then I'm going to wrap this thing up. I've had questions about this. Bashar has really helped clarify this for me lately. I've been told we're moving into fifth density. We're not, because I always wondered about fourth density, and I was told, well, that's time. But the fourth dimension is time. The fourth density is the next stage in our evolution. So Bashar's people, the Essassani, they are in late fourth density, which is a semi-physical state. So fourth density is still physical, but it's less physical than a human being. It's less dense, it's less heavy, it's much lighter, there's more contact with your higher vibrational self. So you're basically harnessing fifth dimensional energy in the third dimensional form to reach fourth density, if that makes sense. So you're harnessing 5D to get to 4D from your 3D place. So when this flash happens, or this ascension moment, or whatever, allegedly that's when we move into fourth density, which again, semi-physical. Right now the Essassani are in late fourth density, but they are quite a bit further ahead than us. So I imagine it takes quite a bit of time to reach late fourth density. So still being a physical human on Earth will be an alluring thing. In fact, it'll be much more alluring because we will have made so much progress, and the melding of our spirit and bodies will be much more complete. So there'll be pretty much no such thing as war and predation and deep conflict. There will still be differences of opinions, different ways to do things, which will make it even more exciting and beautiful. So that's what I believe is coming. But, again, it's so easy to speculate on things you really don't have any proof for and just be either, naively optimistic or just a doomsayer and everything's going to hell. But, I don't believe that we're in a trap. A lot of people believe in the soul trap thing, that we're, don't go towards the light. The light's part of a recycling center for souls that just goes on a feedback loop on Earth so that the Draco reptilians or whatever can feed off of our negative energy, or our louche creative energy that, when negatively charged, apparently is food for them. Now, I've heard people on DMT trips see these types of beings and see this type of dynamic. However, Bashar has said there are no negative entities interacting with human beings at this time. He said that they can't even perceive us. Negatively oriented beings cannot perceive us. Does that not mean then, or does that mean though, let me rephrase that. I don't do words good. So my thinking is, all right, maybe what my friend saw is a legit thing, because this was my friend who took an enormous amount of ayahuasca in Peru. They gave him a way too big of a cup just because he's a tall guy. And he saw all kinds of crazy shit. Like, he saw himself dying in a 3rd century Chinese temple surrounded by his family, and he could feel the pain of his family. Had something to do with like a ceiling he fell from or something crazy. And so he said he always had these fears in this lifetime of a certain style of like ceiling. Anyway, part of it was he saw reptilians feeding off of negative energy on Earth. Now, there's a part of me that thinks, okay, well, that sounds really nefarious, right? That sounds like they're evil, like they're setting it up to do that. But maybe that's just food to them, and they see a food source and they go and they eat it. But maybe that fear energy or whatever it is that they're feeding off of would have just been there anyway. And, now someone gets to benefit from it, I guess. I have questions about all of that, of course, but I guess you don't have to always see everything that sounds on its surface negative as like negative. Maybe that's just truly how they eat, and they're not pulling the strings, they're not interacting with us. They just know, oh, this place is full of negative energy, let's go eat here. not like they're the ones who made the false matrix. And I know there's, I see some other channels I follow talk a lot about archons of the false matrix and, the soul trap and a lot of these more negatively oriented messages. And I tend to avoid those because I feel like, yes, that stuff's all possible because anything is possible that we want to create. But why do I want to even put fear into a thing that I don't have to? Like, I don't even have to be aware of those mechanisms or how they work to move forward in the light. Like, it doesn't really benefit me to know there might be something nefarious out there that's trying to get me, because then I have to like give into some level of fight or flight fear of how do I defend myself? How do I protect myself? What do I, and there's all these steps you can do from these guides about protecting yourself from, malevolent archon energy. And I think that's overcomplicating it. I think it's as simple as the fundamentals of seeing everyone else as equally divine and worthy of this experience and infinite creators given power by the infinite source. I don't think you have to complicate it with all this other stuff and all this other, these things are doing this and, we'll find out, right? We'll find out eventually, or we won't, and this is all some big trap, and we're all totally fucked. And if that's the case, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do at this point? And why would you have this level of awareness? Why would we have millions of NDEs that are incredibly consistent with the theme of unconditional love, full acceptance, full just awe and wonderment? I don't buy that is somehow manipulated, or that there's something out there that's pulling the strings, making that some kind of hallucination so that we believe there's a happy ending and we're really just going into the light, into a big soul trap, and the lizards are on the moon sucking all of our energy. You can waste your life just becoming endlessly, desperately paranoid about every possible conspiracy. But is it bringing you any positivity, light, or enlightenment or understanding that is making your life better or the people around you is better? And if it's not, then maybe it's not worth really even pursuing or understanding, even if it's, now you're not ignorant and you have this knowledge. And, that's how I always felt. Like, I can't be ignorant. I need to know everything that's going on. And I don't, because not all of it is relevant to me. We're here to experience what's relevant to us. So move towards what's relevant to you, not towards what everyone else is telling you is relevant to you, because they don't know what is relevant to you. Only you can know that. And I know a lot of this sounds like deter, but we live in a way where we're not even deterring hard enough, because it's so simple and we overcomplicate it. When we really march to the beat of our own drummer and move into who we are, we actually become better at working with each other. We think, we have to always give in to each other's desires and expectations, but it's the opposite. It's when we fully become aware and awake and alive within ourselves that we can really be with other people and be present with them and not be thinking about, what are they thinking about me? Are they judging me? And I mentioned this earlier. When you're not in your own head and you just put yourself out there and let the chips fall where they may, and if someone judges you or on your appearance or the way you talk or look, why is that a you problem? Why is that not a them problem? Because people who are truly content and in love with themselves don't find any energy to find fault with other people or to look for divisions or judgments. There's just no point, because you now realize they're just as valid and important as you. So why look for these arbitrary differences? So that's my soapbox message. I was going to do this through Spotify because it's free, but I got to be honest, I morally am opposed to Spotify in how they pay out their artists. I think it's incredibly predatory. Their CEO is not a person I admire in his ethics or practices, and the way he talks about musicians and the disposability of it all. And yeah, it's perfectly one of many shining examples of where we've gone astray. When somebody makes hundreds of millions of dollars who doesn't produce a single piece of music himself off of incredibly hardworking musicians who are right now either barely making it, going bankrupt and calling it quits, or one of the very few top artists who's raking in money regardless of what they're being paid for the streams. So yeah, that being said, I probably will purchase one more month of the subscription through who I use for this podcast just to do a couple more episodes. And it may turn back into a full-time thing. I'm really trying to like feel it out, you know. Pauline was really encouraging to me the other day when we had a video chat. She saw it in my charts. This is something I'm supposed to be doing in some way, communicating with people, especially younger adults, and in a way that's more plain and, you know, not with this air of like superiority or like I know what I'm doing or I've got it all figured out, because I really don't. I really genuinely don't have any I don't see any issue with me sliding into that role, because I do not, when I try to get overconfident about something, I get absolutely served. Like it comes back to me quick. I get humbled very quickly, and I realize, oh yeah, you're not supposed to be falsely confident about stuff you don't really know. Just speak from your heart, speak from your experience, and again, let the chips fall where they may. So maybe I just need to do that. If you want to hear more of me and my particular insights, you have the keys, 639@gmail.com. If you want to come on and be interviewed or, you know, talk about anything, that's always a possibility. I'm pretty terrible with video interviews, but just because I get really uncomfortable when I can't like see somebody in person. There's a weird vibe thing there for me, but that's a personal thing. But I still am open to doing this again. I just need kind of a little bit of a push, a little bit of a motivation. You know, I don't see a lot changing with the numbers on the show, and I'm not promoting it because I don't have the money to go out and just like blast it on TikTok or whatever you got to do. So anyway, here I am for the time being, and I'm not going to do any more. If you don't hear from me, I'm dead kind of thing, is because that's kind of lame. I might just be broke and can't do more podcasts, or I could be dead. You never know. It doesn't matter. This is all about you anyway. This is all about your journey, you awakening to your light. I'm just one random guy who's trying to point you back to the road if you've somehow veered off of it. Or if you're on the road, I'm here to say, hey, good job. Stay on the road. You're doing great. You already got this. You know, you've never not had this. No one's going to get it wrong. No one's going to fuck this up. And we're all going to find our way home. We just are going at different paces. It's like me running the mile in high school. I was always way back in the line because of my childhood asthma and terrible shin splints and ligament and joint problems I didn't even know about at the time. So I was always in the back, huffing, puffing, like shins on fire, and just like, how in the hell am I gonna get to the finish line? You know, and it'd always be me and just a few other people in the very back dragging across. But we made it. You know, it didn't look pretty. A lot of other people probably judged me and the scragglers for being out of shape or whatever, but we made it. And that's how it is with this. You might see someone else really struggling and go, oh my God, what? Get it together. But like, dude, they might have asthma and shin splints, metaphorically speaking, and they're just doing their best to try and like gut it out and make it through and finish the race. And, you know, everyone's way through is just as valid. So try and see each other as flowers growing at different rates. Some are seedlings, some are full grown. They're not any better or worse than the other. It's all about perspective. Love yourself, forgive yourself, remember you are infinite, and just let that spread out naturally. So hope you are all well in this wild and ridiculous time to be alive, but let's just dream of a beautiful new future and start over. Let's create something beautiful out of the ashes of what is being destroyed right now. As heartbreaking as some of these things are that are being destroyed, let's use it as an opportunity to make something significantly better. I'm not going to say build back better, because that's I'm tired of lame political catchphrases, but you know what I mean. We have every capacity to create the entire universe and experience we want to have, not what we think is the only thing available to us. Or, well, this is the only system that works because it's the only thing we've tried that kind of works. No. We are creative. Let's start a whole new system. Call it something completely different. It doesn't have to be communism or socialism or capitalism. Let's call it, I don't know, usism, or no isms at all. How about let's just call it living, and we, you know, take care of each other. That our top priority is that every single human being is fed, clothed, housed, and healthy. It's super achievable. We don't think so because we've been brainwashed by the ultra rich into thinking there's only so many resources and blah, 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 blah. No, no, no. It's completely possible to live the way Jesus actually prescribed. We just don't believe in many ways that it is because, again, brainwashing, propaganda, messaging. So let's transcend the BS and let's start over with something beautiful, new, expansive, inclusive, diverse, and full of the Christ consciousness, which is all of those things. So, all right, I'm really going now. I say this to you all in love and light. Be well, love you, and namaste.